Guys, let me just say, Warlord's Ruined is the absolute best dungeon Bungie has ever released, and personally, my favorites. Hence our tweet yesterday saying it's 10 out of 10. Now, some people are saying that's too high, considering that the loot is a little lackluster, and I do agree. I wish the loot was a bit more spicy. Granted, I don't know all the roles we can get, so I can't really pass judgment on the loot. With that being said, though, where this dungeon is, based on the day one experience, based on the experience of a solo player, from its vibe, its aesthetic, its trap, its mystery, its lore. This is one of those dungeons that's gonna make you want to go back in it and find every single secret. And like one of the comments we got yesterday was, this is just a rehash, reskin Grasp of Avarice. Dude, what are you looking at? How can you say this is a reskin Grasp? These are completely different worlds. On top of that, everything in this dungeon is tying into the Hamkar. Now, for those that are just here for the guide, whether just for the dungeon or for the catalyst for the exotic, Buried Bloodline, which by the way, we did a live review on, timestamps are all down below. But I need to just get my thoughts out on this dungeon, because when I see Bungie do something right, we have to praise it. And based on my experience with it so far, it is worth the price tag. Now, let me just say some things about this dungeon that's different from previous dungeons. First up, you've got 3 bosses. Now, interestingly enough, all 3 kind of challenge you differently, especially the third boss being a long-range boss. Your build will have to change. You're gonna be like me, trying to run around meleeing the final boss. Not exactly optimal. Secondly, this is the most booby-trapped dungeon I have ever experienced. The chests are booby-trapped. The floor is booby-trapped. The walls, which have these sneaky vents, also booby-trapped. And what's sad is we probably spent more time right after the first encounter here in prison. You literally get teleported here and you gotta figure your way out. Now we're gonna get into that in just a moment. But what I love about this dungeon is that it challenges you on a multitude of levels. There's also these mystery doors, which are tied to the quest. But dude, I'm a sucker for doors, right? What's behind it? Whether it was Remnant or Dark Souls, I gotta know, man, what's on the other side? Could be some goodies, could be a trap. And that's the beauty of this dungeon. It's got a level of mystery to it that I feel like previous dungeons have just missed. It's like, yeah, there's some baddies down here. You kill them, but then that's about it. Now, I know we're really focused on the dungeon itself, like in the Warlord's Ruins, but it's in the snowy peaks that really grabs me. Dude, it's December right now. We're heading into winter. I can feel the cold through my Guardian. And as you're ascending these peaks, you're finding these little caves to just jump through. And you don't know. This could be the right way, could be the wrong way, but it doesn't even matter, because if there's a hole, us Guardians are going inside. And you know you're on the right track when you find this huge taken ball with all this stuff orbiting around it, similar to like Corrupted almost. But this was the moment that I gave this dungeon a 10 out of 10. I grappled to this rock and I got to orbit this giant taken ball. Now, I eventually jumped off, killed some ants, but I kind of wondered, how long could I do this? I actually may just go back and grapple this thing and just see where it takes me. No pun intended. Where it goes to the deep, had these underwater sections that were cool to look at. They really were not that cool to traverse. You just kind of fell and you made sure you didn't die. There were moments throughout this dungeon run, especially as a solo player, where you just kind of just take everything in. And there was a moment there where I wondered if I was even playing Destiny. I was like, is this even Destiny right now? It almost reminds me of when we heard about Destiny in its inception, that half the studio wanted to make an RPG that was medieval based and the other half wanted to make a sci-fi shooter. And so they gave us Destiny. But I would say that Destiny has leaned more into the sci-fi, more into the futuristic. Here though, they're diving into that medieval. And let me just say, guys, I am all for it. Now, before we get into the dungeon, the mechanics, the exotic catalyst, and everything else, we do need to talk loot, because I know that's a sore point. I will say they are interesting weapons, and I gotta give Bungie credit here. One of the weapons is a rocket-assisted sidearm. Its trait reads, the sidearm fires self-propelled rocket ammunition. Projectiles explode on impact for high damage. Now, we've already looked at it. It's definitely not meta, but it's a new archetype. And it's interesting because Bungie said we weren't gonna get this weapon until final shape, or at least that's what I thought during the reveal. Some of these are coming out now, which really spices things up. Hell, even the exotic is something completely new. It's a sidearm, looks like a crossbow, shoots 2 bolts, that tracks. But again, not necessarily meta either. However, we're gonna be taking another deep look at it with the exotic catalyst in our final review. None of these weapons are currently in the API though, but these are the roles we've seen so far. For the sidearm, in that third column, we have Lead from Gold, Impulse Amplifier, Offense Strike, Inline Action, Loose Change, and Beacon Rounds. Now, no lie, Impulse Amplifier could be the play there. Now, Beacon Rounds is a new trait. It states that final blows of this weapon grants you projectile tracking. Again, everything here is really intriguing. Now, for that fourth column, you've got Surrounded, Adagio, Bolt Shot, Attrition Orbs, Deconstruct, and Permeability. And for my folks that don't know what Permeability is, it's a new trait. It's not that great, but using your class ability changes this weapon's damage type to match your subclass until you stow the weapon. Now, for Beacon Rounds, we got to play with a roll. And from our experience, and again, we're gonna have a deep dive on this, but its tracking is different than, say, tracking on a rocket launcher. You see, Beacon rounds, once activated, they're much more aggressive. And rather than tracking to what you're currently aiming at, beacon rounds would track to what you last aimed at, as long as the target is relatively in front of you. So yes, hitting targets around corners, from very off angles, all of that is on the table. And while these are extreme examples, the tracking really does feel great in general, as projectile-based weapons in Destiny normally don't feel that great to use, especially at range. Now moving on to our next weapon, we have Vengeful Whisper. It's a strand precision bow, and this is our first ever strand bow in Destiny 2. Keep in mind though, we're gonna have an exotic strand bow this season called Wishkeeper. Essentially, it's like a strand version of Vertiglass Curves. Looks very potent. However, this is a legendary strand bow. In its third column, we have Hipfire Grip, Archer's Tempo, Explosive Head, Keep Away, Inline Action, and Slice. And Slice is a new trait, really synergizes well with Strand, as casting your class ability allows this weapon to sever targets on hit for a brief duration, up to a maximum number of targets. Now in column 4, we have Successful Warm-Up, Offense Strike, Hatchling, Collective Action, Precision Instruments, and High Ground. I think the most intriguing thing here for me is the Strand combination, right? Slice, Hatchling, just build as heavily as you can into Strand. And considering we have artifact mods like Unraveling Orbs and Horde Shuttle, this is something you can definitely build into. Now next on the list, we have Names Lance. This is a Strand rapid fire sniper rifle. Now sniper rifles are doing a lot better this season. We had an entire DPS test for snipers, and rapid fires especially, like Supremacy, put out crazy damage. And that's because of that 15% damage buff this season. But looking at the perks, we're a tad bit disappointed. It doesn't look like we're gonna use this over Supremacy. Keep in mind, maybe more traits will reveal themselves when they unlock in the API, but in that third column, we have Reconstruction, Keep Away, Hatchling, Discord, and Loose Change. In that fourth column, we have Demolitionist, High Ground, Attrition Orbs, and Deconstruct. Now, I feel like there's definitely gotta be another perk here, as nothing here is exciting me for both PvE and for PvP. And for those that don't know what Deconstruct is, it's a new trait that states that dealing sustained damage grants bonus damage against vehicles and constructs, and partially refills the magazine. Those constructs includes barricades, turrets, stasis crystals, and other objects in the field. Again, nothing that crazy. I'm hoping there's gonna be another trait here or two that might elevate this weapon's potential. Now, our last legendary weapon for Warlord's Ruin is another strand weapon, this time a caster frame sword called Dragon Colt Sickle. Dude, in one season, Bungie has given us 2 caster frame swords, Chivalric Fire, which we have a deep dive on coming out soon, and now Dragon Colt Sickle. Now, in its third column, you have Tireless Blade, Assassin's Blade, Demolitionist, Unrelenting, Duelist Trance, and Slice. In that fourth column, we have Whirlwind Blade, Surrounded, Chain Reaction, Golden Tricorn, Hatchling, and Attrition Orbs. Now, let me just say, caster frames are kind of a hard sell. We'll have our thoughts out on the ritual weapon soon. Pretty much the same thing applies. But I do think we need to give Bungie credit for just cool weapon designs, most notably that rocket sidearm. And if there's one thing Bungie's really focusing on for Final Shape, they've stated it multiple times. They want the focus to go back to weapons. They want to give us cool weapons. And who knows, man, Bungie can always buff these, especially this sidearm, at some point in the future. Now let's talk about this exotic. We talked about it yesterday in our live review. This weapon is called Buried Bloodline. This is a void special ammo sidearm that shoots like a crossbow. It comes with the exotic trait, Hungering Quarrel, stating that it double fires tracking bolts, and landing bolts leeches health from the targets. Now for its trait, we have Violent Reanimation. Multiple final blows of this weapon grant Devour to the wielder, and the exotic catalyst states that while Devourer is active, this allows this weapon to weaken on hit. Now how to get the catalyst. Big shout out to Scaro on this one. He's pretty much the guy that always figures out the catalyst first every single season. Check him out. But similar to Ghost of the Deep, there's gonna be puzzles you need to solve inside the dungeon to unlock this exotic catalyst. First up, you gotta have the exotic. I know, that just eliminated 99% of us. Maybe not that many. But you also have to have completed the quest for this dungeon, which is called In the Shadows of the Mountain. Now, I'm not gonna go over the whole quest here. It's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is just run the dungeon and complete those objectives in the dungeon. Collect Homkar bones, which are locked behind these doors. And each time you rerun this dungeon and complete one of these steps, you will be able to unlock the next level of these doors. So like you have level 1, level 2, and then level 3. And behind each of these doors will be those bones. And you can actually see in the quest steps itself, guys, it will tell you where these bones are. The rest of the quest steps just require you to beat the encounters again and collect Dark Aether, which you can get a load of from those yellow bar screeps. When you see those guys, they're glowing. Go balls deep, fellas. Kill them as quickly as you can, and you'll get a ton. Now back to the canvas. Once you've done the quests and you have the exotic, you need to then complete the first encounter of the dungeon. Get to the prison puzzle, free yourself, and then you'll be able to do the first puzzle. Now in the corner of the room behind the grate, you're gonna see a little taken blight, and you're gonna want to shoot it. The blight will disappear, and you'll see the buff Imminent Wish appear on your screen. And the torches behind the grate grate where the light was will light up, and it'll light up in a specific pattern. More Taken Blights will also spawn around this room, and the torches that are lighting up will correspond to which Taken lights you need to stand on and cleanse, similar to the main mechanic of this dungeon. Now here's a diagram on the screen, courtesy of Scarrow, to find out the correct ones to activate. Now onto the second puzzle for the Exotic Atlas. Continue on through the dungeon, and the second puzzle is found on the big bridge right before the second boss. Clear all the ads, and then turn around in the direction you came from, and you'll see a Taken Blight on this castle tower, which will activate some torches and darkness totems down the path you just came from. Now this is a pretty simple one-to-one. The torch on the left corresponds to the pillar with the Taken totem on the right to stand on. Activate these in order to complete the puzzle. Now to get to the third and final puzzle, progress through the dungeon some more, defeat the second boss, go through to the final jump puzzle section, and it's going to be in this area here with the Taken ball in the sky with some floating rocks and these platforms around it. Look down to your left and you'll see a Taken Blight. Shoot it. Torches directly across from you will light up. Again, these torches correspond left to right with the darkness totems that appear. Once this puzzle is solved, continue on through the end of the jump puzzle, and you'll see a totem ball that you may have noticed during the previous runs, but you couldn't interact with them. Now you can, and it will say Open Chamber Gateway. This will teleport you to the secret area, and in this room, you will trigger a boss fight with a Taken Wizard. Now it's the same mechanic you've seen before. In order to break her shield, there's going to be 6 torches, 3 on the left and 3 on the right, which will correspond to the Taken totems that you need to cleanse on each side. Now once you're able to kill the boss, you obtain the Exotic Catalyst for Buried Bloodline. Again, huge shout out to Scarrow for finding this out, and guys, check him out for the direct guide. Now, I know we're doing everything backwards here, on to the dungeon guide. Everything you see here is pretty much the same mechanic throughout the entire dungeon. You'll notice that in the opening encounter, the boss starts out immune. Now you just want to start out by clearing ads until a Taken Scorn sensor is spawned in. Now the boss has an animation for spawning these, and once the sensor is spawned, you'll receive a buff on your screen reading Imminent Wish. Now this is a timer that tells you how long the Taken sensors will be around for. Now in this particular encounter, when that Taken sensor is spawned, simultaneously, all fireteam members will be teleported into cages. Now when this happens, guys, don't freak out, look around, shoot the Taken Blight eyes. There will be 3 around each cage, and once you've shot all 3, the cage will open. If you do not shoot all 3, you will die. Pretty medieval, am I right? Now after you're free, you want to stand in the Taken sensor or even next to it. Again, it's got a pretty good radius, so if you need to like stand behind a rock, as long as you got a toe in that circle or on the edge of the circle, it'll count. And there's actually been times where I was like on the edge of it and I thought I was outside of it and I still got the cap. Now after about 6 seconds next to the Taken sensor, it will be cleansed, and there will be an audio and visual cue to let you know it's good to go. Now if you cleanse at least 1 Taken sensor before Imminent Wish runs out, you'll be allowed to damage the boss, and you can tell that the boss is damageable by a buff on your screen that reads Names Wish Empowerment. Also, the boss's health bar loses that immunity shield. Now once the damage phase ends, you're just repeating the process. Now this is how you extend the damage phase. You want to capture multiple sensors. So 2 of them that are present, you want to get both of them, guys. And this will allow you to do damage much longer. And that's essentially the mechanic throughout the entire dungeon. Capture multiple sensors and then do DPS. Now on to the prison escape. This is the one that got us stuck for quite a bit. Once you kill the first boss, you will be instantly teleported into a prison cell alongside your fire team. What's even more brutal is that your loot is literally on the floor right in front of you, and you can't do anything about it unless you escape your cell. Now this requires communication with your fire team, or if you're playing solo, some of these doors will be open and you can actually traverse this entire area, and there'll be a little ceiling hole that you can jump up to hop in the next cell. This is a very easy mechanic though. All you need to do is find the scratch marks. You can see what this looks like on the screen. The point of these marks is that it tells you the order that the locks need to be in. Now these locks are these circular discs that will spin when you shoot them. Now when you shoot them once, they go counterclockwise. But if you shoot them a second time, it will stop it, and you shoot them a third time, it will go clockwise. Now the point of the scratch marks is that it tells you how many of these locks need to be clockwise or counterclockwise. Meaning, if you have a 3 next to your cell, next to this skeleton, that means you need 3 counterclockwise and 3 clockwise. Now this is split between 2 different cells, right? So if you have an uneven set of numbers, say 1 is in one cell, 5 is the other, the direction that the skeleton is facing next to the scratches will let you know if that amount of clocks should be spinning either clockwise or counterclockwise. So for instance, if it's 1, but it's to the left of the skeleton, 1 will be counterclockwise, and the 5 will be clockwise. Now, once you actually set up the locks, you then need to make your way to the cell that can see the lever. And for a solo player, you'll start off in a cell that has an open door to your right. You just want to go to that door, go all the way around, jump up through the hole, all the way over, jump back down, and then look across to where you were when you originally spawned in. And there'll be a lever to the right. Shoot that lever, and this will open up all the doors if you've got the right code. Now on to the maze traversal. Now after escaping Azkaban, simply move forward into a maze. This maze is very straightforward, guys. There is lots of traps, but honestly, I think it's just best you walk over every single one of them and die at least once. Builds character. This is truly the dungeon experience. Now, there are lots of chests that are scattered throughout, but you do not want to open the ones that have a glow. Now, when you get close to them, they're deceptive because the glow goes away. And then when you're far from them, they're glowing. Now, you know you've opened the wrong chest when screams spawn up all around you and kill you. And if you're playing solo, this means you have to start this completely over. Now, once you're out of this maze, you'll be met with Scorn and a giant meatball. You can't even damage the meatball, guys. Just run straight forward, kill all the ants, and then proceed to jump through the left side of the cliff, through the hole, and onward to the second encounter. Now, the second encounter starts by you shooting this blight. A Taken Ogre will spawn in, alongside a number of ants and 6 blinded eyes. To begin this process, you need to destroy all 6 eyes. Once you've done that, on opposite ends of the arena, 2 yellow bar Scorn will spawn with the message, Scorn rise to invoke their fortune and your demise. Now, these Scorn will spawn a Taken sensor, just like the one from the first encounter. Now, what you want to do is wait for them to spawn that first sensor. Then you want to kill them right afterwards while they're standing on or near that first sensor. What this will allow you to do is they will drop 2 sensors so that when you go over there to cap 1, you're actually capping 2. Now, this is important because for every sensor you cap, an orb will spawn in the middle, and you need those solar orbs to light the bonfires down low. There are actually 4 of them surrounding Greg here. And the reason why you need those lit is because that will actually begin the damage phase, and standing in each one of these bonfires will allow you to do damage. You stand outside of it, you won't be able to do damage. And Greg will actually walk up to each one of them, slam down, and if he doesn't make it to them, the timer for that damage phase on that particular bonfire will go out. And what you have to do is just move to each one of them. Cycle through all 4 of them. Now back to the big yellow bar Scorn you just took out. While you're going for the cap on this Taken sensor, be very careful because in the bottom left hand of your screen, you're getting a debuff called Biting Cold. This will kill you if it reaches 10 stacks, but really it kills you when it reaches 9. You see, you start to get slowed at 9 stacks and pretty fast. And the only way to actually get this debuff off is by standing next to these fire torches. They're spread out throughout the area, but you got 1 pretty much on either side and then 1 in the middle. Now, this doesn't last forever, just only when those Scorn are in and during the damage phase, but you're going to be standing on those totems anyways during the damage phase, so you're going to be just fine. Just make sure you do not get anywhere close to 8 stacks. Like the moment you get to 8 stacks, you need to be moving. Now, as far as doing damage to Greg, one of the best weapons to use is Dragon's Breath. And that's because Dragon's Breath will stun him. I'm sure Leviathan's Breath could actually do the exact same thing, but this is a great way to just kind of keep him locked in place so that he's not coming over to you, slamming down on the totem, and interrupting your damage phase. Now, after about 15 seconds in each one of these fires, the boss goes immune again. You'll have to shoot the eyes and repeat the process of spawning in those yellow bar Scorn. Now, on to traversing to the final encounter. After defeating the ogre, you head straight ahead, and you'll come across a room full of many different chests. Now, keep in mind, guys, most of these are fake. There's only 1 chest in here that has no glow. I don't know how it is for everybody else, but it's normally the one on the left for me. You let me know, though. And keep in mind, there are only 3 lootable secret chests throughout the dungeon, but always just back off and check for that blue glow. Now, after the mimic room, continue forward, traversing toward the final encounter. Now, the final encounter is pretty straightforward. Same mechanics here, but it does have a slight twist. First up, be careful. There are Blightweaver wizards, which are annoying because they can actually make certain areas blinded. Find yourself taking damage, make sure to get out of the icky, or at least shoot the blight. Now, you do want to prioritize these wizards, so you don't have to deal with that. Now, as for mechanics, the boss will be surrounded by 6 blinded eyes. Once these have been destroyed, 2 yellow bar Scorn will spawn. Now, again, just like before, guys, let them spawn in that first sensor, then kill that Scorn right on that sensor. That way you can cap both. Now, once the first sensor is being dropped, you'll notice a new mechanic. All fire team members will be instantly afflicted by Hex of Vengeful Corruption. And this has a 15-second timer and kills you if it reaches 0. Now, to cleanse this buff, you must melee these immune corrupted Hex Drinker Scorn. Now, once you've meleeed them, your debuff will be transferred to them. You can literally look at them and tell that they now have the debuff. The problem is that this is a game of hot potato, because if the Hex Drinker hits you with that debuff, then they just give it right back. The issue that I found is once they give it back, sometimes I can't give it back to them. What you really want to do, guys, is use some blinding grenades grenades, blind these fools, go stand on that taken sensor, get the caps, and then right at the last second, melee one of them. Now, if you melee too soon and one of them melees you at the last second, they'll give you the debuff and you'll pretty much instantly die. Now, upon getting those cleanses, you will then enter the damage phase. This is obviously harder for solo players because I'm pretty sure you could only cap 2 in that amount of time. Maybe you can cap 4. I haven't done this final boss solo, but if you're with the fire team, definitely get all 4. And you could do damage for quite a bit of time. Now, the boss is backed up and in the air. So if you got a melee-based build, don't use it. You can use linear fusion rifles, you can use sniper rifles, you can use rockets, Celestial Nighthawk, Golden Gun is really good, guys, especially if you're leaning into artifact mods. We did damage testing the other day, and that super puts out so much damage now. Now, after each damage phase, you'll continue moving up each platform and essentially doing the exact same mechanic. Kill the Scorn, get debuff, capture those taken sensors, and then enter damage phase again. It's in the final damage phase, though, that things get pretty chaotic. The boss will teleport to the middle above the blight. Now, when you follow it, you'll be granted an unlimited names wish empowerment, which will allow you to deal damage for as long as you can keep all of the blind eyes from attaching to the boss. Now, there are a lot, and they come back faster with each one you kill. Now, once all of them have attached, you must jump to the next platform and repeat the process, giving you another brief damage phase. And once that phase ends, the boss and you will teleport to the bottom to repeat this entire process again. Now, there is a final stand. When that happens and you reach that bar of the boss's health, you and the boss will be teleported to the top of the arena, and you'll be granted names wish empowerment to deal one final amount of damage. But upon clearing that final stand, guys, you've done it. You just cleared the Warlord's Ruin dungeon. So guys, good luck. One of my favorite dungeons, if not my favorite dungeon ever in Destiny history. Fingers crossed we get Fireteam Finder launch completely in the game. We did the stress test the other day. It was really good. I feel like Bungie needs to launch this as soon as possible though, because there are so many people I know that would take advantage of it, especially for this dungeon. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.